All right, everyone. Welcome back to Cricket Daily. It's the fifth test of the Ashes series. It's day 2. It's the day-night test in Hobart. I'm Menners. I'm joined by Paul Dennett. Paul, an action-packed day of cricket today. 17 wickets fell. What's your takeaway?
I was just doing that maths then. I was going to tell the story of the day. You've done it half, and I think it's 17 for 287, unless I've got my maths wrong. Oh, another corker of a day's test cricket. These 2 days have been the highlight of the series for me. I mean, it's just been so entertaining the whole way through. And yeah, the day just flew by. And I was just, when it finished then, I was desperate for them to get a last over. And apart from anything else, I just wanted 6 more balls of entertainment. Yeah, a wonderful day of cricket.
You're right, a cracking day. Australia were bowled out for 303 in their first innings this morning. Then England were bowled out for 188 this afternoon. And then Australia had to face a tricky little session before stumps of about an hour and a half and were reduced to 3 for 37 with Warner, Khawaja and Labuschagne all back in the pavilion. Boland and Smith not out. Smith is not out 17. Boland is not out 3. I guess we should go back to the beginning of the day. There's so much stuff to cover, but sort of went as expected with the rest of the Australian innings. They were quite aggressive before the second new ball, which never actually came. But, Lyon made a nice little 31 off 27, and that got the total up over 300. Alex Carey was dismissed for 24 and probably missed an opportunity. But 303 is a very good score.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It's so typical of this series that England keep on threatening to kind of compete. And just as every moment they look like they're starting to really get into a game, that's when things get taken away from them. And it happened numerous times today, I thought. The first of which was Nathan Lyon, because they got those first 2 wickets of Stark and Cummins quite quickly. And then Lyon, as he does, plays with utter freedom and hit some of the sweetest, he hit 3 sixes and looked really, really good. And it just wasn't massive, but those extra, 30 runs maybe that Australia got above budget from when they were 8 down is again symptomatic of England's travails on this tour, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, and if it is a low-scoring game, then those little cameos become quite vital in the wash-up, especially if England are looking like they're going to be chasing a 4th innings target. So that was Australia all out for 303 in the first session. Best of the bowlers for England: Stuart Broad 3 for 59, Mark Wood 3 for 115, went at 6.4 and over. Ollie Robinson didn't bowl since yesterday, still suffering from back spasms, or they did bowl in the last bit. Wokes 2 for 64, but Broad was the standout. And then it was the England second innings, and it was more of the same from them. Top order woes. This time it was Rory Burns getting run out. Yeah, I mean, England just can't take a trick, can they, with their top order at the moment?
I was trying to think of something funny to send out about that. Like, at least this time he didn't get bowled. He's found a way to stop them. And I just thought, it's just too cruel. Like that run out for all the things that have gone wrong on this tour for them. But Ricky Ponting vehemently made the point on Channel 7, and I knew he was going to make it, and it was absolutely right, that if it had been Labuschagne in the same instance, he wouldn't have got run out because he would have dived like a raving lunatic and probably would have taken the skin off both arms. But guess what? He would have got back in. And that point was made even more starkly, or whatever the adverb is, about 25 minutes later when there was a drive that Labuschagne chased all the way to the boundary as fast as he could. And he began his dive as it was literally hitting the ropes. Like, it was absolutely the most pointless dive of all time. But that just shows the level of commitment that he has. And if it had been him, I think if it had been any of the Australians, they would have got in. And I don't understand. You work so hard to get back into the side. Why wouldn't you dive? I think he thought it was not going to be a run out, but bizarre, I thought.
Yeah, way too casual. And he's now got he's got a ton of ducks in the last calendar year. And there was a stat, maybe 7 ducks or something. It's a lot. So yeah, Rory Burns having a shocker. Now, this is something, and he's the first example, but it happened 3 times in this innings. Well, Burns edged one to Carey off Stark. no appeal, no referral. Then Milan did it on an inside edge. I'm not sure who the bowler was. And then the last dismissal of the innings, Chris Wokes caught by Carey down the leg side. Carey said, "Oh no, I think it was thigh pad initially. He didn't push for the referral." So that's 3 times in the innings where the keeper, who should be in the best position, has missed seeing an edge. I find that very strange.
It's funny how the game's changed, hasn't it? You would never have thought that would be part of the keeper's skill set even 15 years ago, that you've actually got to be able to be very good at that. And yeah, I take your point. They were hard ones for sure, but he's in a pretty good position to see. And yeah, that was three that he got wrong. That was a good review by Stark, that one that he got off of Wokes. And again, that was another example of England were looking all right there. Wokes was batting as he does, technically a little bit all over the shop in terms of backing away a bit or not getting completely into line, but he's got a great eye. He bats with freedom, and he was batting England into not anywhere near a position of parity. But if they'd got the lead down to 70 or 80, it would have been something. And so, but yeah, Australia nipped it in the bud. Hey, before we go on, one thing I wanted to
start of the day. Oh yeah, good.
Not a stat of the day, just with regards to, before I forget it, because with regards to Robinson not bowling, Shane Warne had this notion on the Fox coverage saying that what they should do is they talked about how I think it was the bowling coach John Lewis or someone who had sort of said that in no uncertain terms he needs to get fitter. And again, they then pointed out the bowling coach is the coach of him at his he comes from the same county as him. As like you could have done this a little bit earlier, but anyway. Shane Warne was saying they should pull him out of the tour to the West Indies and basically put him in a 3-month camp of a Rocky style where he just gets absolutely belted to hell and becomes as fit as he possibly can. It's an idea that actually has some merit, but it recalls what happened with Warney, that famous story of where he'd been in the test side briefly, had been dropped and was just kind of living his life. And swanned up to Terry Jenner's place with a pizza and a slab of beer.
Yeah.
Expecting TJ to say, "Come on in and let's get on it." And instead, he sort of looked at him and said, "Listen, you're a disgrace and blah blah blah, and we're getting up tomorrow at 6 a.m. and you're going to get fit. Leave the beer, by the way." I'll drink that. But and then that really made a difference to Shane Warne. So it's quite a romantic notion that if he does do that, I hope they put a montage together of him in fat school getting completely fit.
I remember when Warney came back from that winter and was looking very, very fit. He was one of those players, though, that you never knew what shape Warney would turn up after the off season. But yeah, so I think it is strange that Robinson can get to this sort of level and still not be, as athletic as. I mean, look at the Australian fast bowling group; they're all supreme athletes. So England's first innings, I mean, they lose Burns, they lose Milan, Crawley as well, caught in close. Good catch by Head off Cummins, shot off the pad and the inside edge. And I don't know if you saw, but Head did this sort of crocodile thing. Well, apparently that's because he's nicknamed himself the bin lid when he's in its short legs. So I don't know why, but he was doing a bin lid impersonation. Wasn't a crocodile. Milan made 25, Joe Root 34, out to a corker from Cummins. Even though it just looked to be clipping the off stump, it was a terrific ball, cut back a long way.
What would have been perfect to sum up this tour, because that was only umpire's call by probably about a centimetre, and he didn't challenge it. It would have been absolutely perfect to sum up this tour if he'd walked off not challenging and Hawkeye shot it missing. That would have been
yeah, exactly. It would have been apt.
It did look plumb.
Yeah, I might do my good day, bad day now because we were on Warney before, so I'll do my bad day. Shane Warne. So he was talking about Scott Boland, yeah? And he was talking about how he's got a bowling average of 8.5 at the beginning. This was before Boland had bowled the ball. And he goes, if Boland, takes 7 or 8 for 100 in this match, his bowling average is going to come down. He'll be averaging like 5. And I was doing the maths in my head going, I actually don't think that's the way averages work. Now, Paul, you're much better at maths than me, but if we take 7 or 8 for 100 in the match, I would suggest his average is going to go up from 8.
It is, yes. There's actually there's a famous riddle about that where I won't bore you with it, but where two fast bowlers who have very good averages, and then one of them takes better figures than the other, and the average. No, suffice it to say, maths is very interesting, and this anecdote is not. So I'm going to stop it.
All right. So that was my bad day. Warnie's maths. Good day. Stuart Broad became the leading wicket taker for England in Ashes tests. Went past Ian Botham, has 129 wickets against Australia. So, that's quite an auspicious record. And certainly he's been one of the most impactful players in my lifetime. I mean, you look at 2009, the Oval, he bowled a decisive spell that helped England secure the Ashes. 2013, 2015, he's consistently delivered match-winning performances in the big games. Incredible stuff from Broad and a great record. That was my good day, bad day. So I thought Sam Billings made a good debut, 29 off 48. Looked good out there.
Yeah, he looked good out there. Disappointing end to his innings, unfortunately, hooking and straight down the throat of fine leg. So, he looked really good. He looked energetic. He took a nice catch later on, but ultimately 29, he'll be pretty disappointed with that.
Got to start. So Wokes come in next ball after Billings. After Pope gets out, and Edge's first ball straight to Warner Wokes, and Warner shells it. It was a tough one because it sort of moved at the last minute, but he should have caught it. And then a couple of overs later, Wokes edges another one into the slips and dropped again. And the slips are way too close together. Mark Waugh's got a point. It's ridiculous, basically standing on top of each other. And, Wokes went on to make 36. Again, a vital mistake from Australia.
Mark Waugh was actually trending on Twitter, and as far as I could tell, it was because people were sick of him saying the slips were too close together. There was all these people saying, if you say the slips are too close together one more time, he was right, though.
Because Warnie had been saying it for an hour as well, so the two of them.
Yeah, but I mean, that one that it went to Steve Smith's kind of nice catching height just to his right at that second slip, and Khawaja at third slip dives in front of him or sort of moves in front of him. And yeah, it would have been an easy catch to Steve Smith, but it was still a catch that Khawaja should have caught. So it just does seem that they are too close together, as slips often seem to be, which is a bit perplexing, but there you go.
So those chances allowed England to get up to 188, and that actually looked a long way away. When they were 6 for 110 when Wokes came out, they could have been bowled out, for 120 or something and coughed up a much bigger lead. The lead was 115, but it could have been much closer to 150. So poor fielding. Mitchell Starc, 3 for 53, again bowled well. Pat Cummins, 4 for 45. Boland, 1 for 33. Poor bloke, those 2 drop chances, and again could have had plenty. So Shane Warne, his average has gone up. Just if Warnie's watching, his average hasn't gone down. Cameron Green, 1 for 45, a bit expensive. So what did you think?
I found it a bit interesting during the Wood and Wokes when they were batting together. They were getting the lead down from an impossible situation. They got it to England being, in a kind of, as I said, almost impossible situation to just being strongly behind. So it was an important little partnership. They didn't seem to be running with all that urgency. 3 or 4 times I thought, I'm surprised they only got 2 runs there. I expected they would have got 3. Strange that there's that lack of urgency. And on my stat of the day, well, I'll mention it while I'm here. It's a straight pure one from CricViz. And it currently gives England a 20% chance of winning this match. Now, I think if you surveyed most people, they'd probably say doesn't feel like they're a 20% chance. It feels a bit lower than that. But whatever it is, it's an important moment. If they can come out tomorrow and have a fantastic day, knock Australia over and to something that's chaseable and win it, 3-1 versus what could have been 5-0, it's an enormous difference. Australia, one of the first series I remember, 84-85 against the West Indies, we should have lost at 5-0. We only lost at 3-1. it's not nothing. So they've got.
Well, I've been saving this up then for the whole test. I mean, this is how fucking hopeless England have been touring Australia. If they win this match, this will be their second best performance in Australia for 35 years, Paul. That's what it comes down to. No, won't it be their second best after winning in 2010-11? They've never lost 2003, they lost 3-1 as well, didn't they?
No,
or was it 4-1? Yeah, so this will be the second worst, second best performance in the last 35 years. In Australia.
No, it'll be equal second because they in 98-99 they lost 3-1.
Okay, so equal second best performance.
94-5 they lost 3-1 as well. But that's the point. It'll be their equal second worst. It's a good point. It's a well-made point. Absolutely, and it's a pretty small thing to be taking. Like, 3-1's better than 5-0 or better than 4-0. But it is what it is.
So look, what did you think though? England coughed, 115 run lead, Australia going out to bat. It was a nervous little session, and I think England got exactly what they wanted it out of it.
They did. Obviously, they would have taken 3 for 30 odd for sure. I just think even then, it still exemplified the difference between the two sides. That they bowled very well in that last session, but there still were precious few balls that to me were right on the money on that kind of third, fourth stump line, just hitting the top of off stump. There were still too many balls that looked good that the players could leave or would get well beaten by. I think that if you could find a sort of an equivalent, Australia in this same situation probably would have taken 5 wickets rather than 3. And I think that was the key, that they bowled. They almost got Scott Boland right at the end, who came in as a night watchman. And so it was definitely a good session, although they were a little lucky in the sense that Warner just crushed a bad ball and hit it in the air. A great catch by Pope. And Labuschagne was strangled down the leg side. So, a little bit of good fortune there. But, yeah, they're still in the game. That's why that 20%, I'm sure, at the innings break would have been more like probably 6 or 7%, I suppose.
Warner, so he was a duck off 3 balls, so that was a pair for him. He's the only ever opener to be dismissed for 2 pairs in Ashes history. So I think that he had a pair in 2019 and now a pair now. That was courtesy of Andrew Sampson, the statistician. As you say, Labuschagne out for 5, strangled down the leg side. I thought Khawaja actually looked really good for his 11 off 38. Yeah, and I thought actually that 38 balls he soaked up at that time was quite vital. It just shielded Head and Green and the rest from, coming out there because, it was pretty tough batting conditions.
It's funny that some people will say, "Oh, yes, now you got to open and you find it a lot tougher than coming in at number 5." To which I'd say, what's an easier proposition, to come out at none for none, or 3 for 13, or 3 for 33? I'd say I'll take none for none. So the number 5 in this Test match for Australia came at 3 for 13 and 3 for 33. It's that's pretty tough as well.
Yeah, I think Marcus Harris is probably relieved he didn't have to bat in that last hour because I'm not sure how well he would have done. Australia 3 for 37. Do you think the game will finish? Well, okay. Well, what do you think sort of Australia needs to sort of, where are they? Sort of they're 142 ahead now, I think, 152 ahead. So, yeah, what do you think they need, and what do you think England can chase?
Well, I'd be flippant if I say I think they need at least a lead of at least 120. I don't know. It's hard to see England winning from here, even though I, as I often do, have had a small wager on them at good odds. But I just can't. I'm not expecting to collect on that bet. What I think will happen is that I don't necessarily think Australia will run away with it tomorrow, but I think that that England's bowling attack is a little bit stressed and strained, that I think that at some point there'll be a partnership or two, and it doesn't take much for Australia to get to a position of relative safety. So they're leading by 152. A chase of 200 for England would be very difficult. A chase of 250 not impossible, but it would be hard to see it happening. So that's where England tomorrow, they have to go all out, wicket-taking balls, hit the top of off stump. They can't, the last thing they want to do is they should have no fielders in sort of defensive positions. They're not going to defend their way to the win here. They've got to blow Australia away, and they won't. They'll, as soon as there's a couple of boundaries, they'll put the deep point back. They'll, Root will come on and bowl a few balls, and they'll milk him for singles. And before you know it, the lead will have mounted to something that's almost unobtainable. Or will it? Who knows? Maybe they'll finally do what they've been threatening to do all season and absolutely compete and knock Australia over for another 80 and have a chase of 230. It could be an absolute grandstand finish.
Yeah, the timing's not great for them because even if they bowl really well and say knock Australia over in the first session tomorrow, that means they're still going to be batting under lights, chasing a smallish target. So, look, it's going to be tough for them. The only thing is perhaps the wicket will just flatten out a bit, but the ball's doing a lot. And it's swinging around, seaming around. So, yeah, I can't see England chasing down. I think for them to have just a small chance, they need to keep the target under 250. So, if they bowl Australia out for, under sort of another 100, I think they've got a sniff, even though it's a long shot. And could be a 3-day test. I could see Australia getting rolled tomorrow morning in England in the afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. One stat that Trent Copeland brought up on Channel 7 that was very fascinating was he showed the degrees of swing that England got in 10 over segments against Australia, and showed how in the first innings, the first 10 overs was swinging around corners, and then it dropped markedly down. And by the time of the 40th over, after the 30th over, it had dropped substantially. He then, after the Australian bowling performance, compared the amount of swing that the Australian bowlers got after 30 overs with what the England bowlers got after 30 overs. I can't remember the amount, but it was a substantial difference in favour of the Australians. And you look at that and think, how could England possibly win when the Australian bowlers are bowling so much better than they were? They also showed the percentage of balls that England either missed or played inexpertly, nicked. And it was like 42% versus Australia was 13% or something like that. So you look at that, I think England are actually doing well to be as in this game as they are.
Absolutely. Joey Kazina, did England bowl a tad too short tonight? Felt like Smith was leaving on length, knowing the ball would go over.
I think they did. It sounds funny to say that, given that they took 3 wickets, but I think that they could have bowled another dozen balls, half a yard fuller, not to the point where they could drive, but to the point where it hit the top of off stump. And I just don't know why they don't.
Yeah, you're right. And Smith was just letting balls hit him in the last half an hour. So I thought Smith looked on. I think he really wants to finish this Ashes series with some runs.
Good little effort by Boland as well, that he came out and, wore a few on the hands. One of them looked quite nasty, actually. And he got a couple of singles off the second last balls of overs and took the bulk of the strike and really navigated a very tough 20 minutes. He can do no wrong at test level.
The way he's going, he'll bring up a ton tomorrow.
Yeah. Yes, he will.
Warney will be like, so does his bowling average come down with that, or? All righty. Well, look, I think that's about it. There was a question here from Ray. What's your opinion on reducing the fixtures of the BBL men as need more meaningful classes? I think that must be games or something. But look, I've said it before. Clashes.
I imagine, yeah.
Good. Yeah, look, I've said it many times. I think we're at a stage where they probably have to reduce the games a little bit. But I'm not sure they will. The TV deal's got 2 more seasons to run and the games are paid for. So I just feel
the season, it's hard to go back, isn't it?
Yeah, and if the games are paid for, they'll play them. But one thing I will say is that they do the TV deal 4 seasons ago. And then after 2 seasons, it's clear the BBL needs some life support. And then COVID comes, and a lot of the ideas that they had around that were out the door, out the window. I mean, the international draft, getting more international players.
Yep.
It was already a long time now. There was quarantine, so it just made it longer. Getting the Australian players playing more, well, you can't do that because they're in international bubbles. So I do have a lot of sympathy for the organisers. I think had they sort of put in a lot of those measures, maybe they could have improved the comp, but we're in a situation where they just haven't been able to.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. That I think there are things that need to be fixed with the BBL, but I think that the biggest number one reason why this year it has lacked its luster has been COVID. It's not the only reason, but it's like 60%, and it would be the wrong thing to jump at shadows and make changes to things that don't need to be changed, because if COVID had not been here, things would have looked different. So, I mean, today, am I right? Did they have the Sydney Derby on today during the match, or did I misread that?
Yeah. So the Sydney Smash was on. The Sixers, and it was a really good game. The Sixers made 197. So, if you're watching on TV, the first team makes 200, you're really happy. But no one was watching because they were all watching the test. Interestingly, they got 20,000 at the ground, which is incredible. I don't know how many people were actually there. Like sometimes those figures can be slightly inflated, but say they got 20,000. That's pretty incredible considering the test was on and everywhere I go, no one's around because of COVID. I mean, going to the cricket's a good one because you're outside, but still.
I'm sure that is legitimate, that crowd. Although I do recall years ago when, well, I think it was the Roosters, your mob, put together a crowd figure of like an embarrassing midwinter crowd of 8,300. And I think the Daily Telegraph had taken photos of every single section in the crowd and then manually counted them and said, no, it was only 3,000 there. So I'm sure that didn't happen. That's an amazing crowd. That's another example of the Big Bash. When it gets a chance, it will flourish again. And a friend of mine, Matt, who is a big cricket fan, but a massive NRL fan, said, this is kind of like what the NRL and the AFL went through in 2020. It was just like, we have to get the season through one way or another. It's a schmozzle, but they got it across the line. They got the TV games in. They didn't break the bank. And then things moved on onwards and upwards from there. And I think that'll be the case. They do need to look at some things with the Big Bash. And my interest in it this year is lower. I think one of the things is that normally it is not obscured by the international season so much, that normally the final test match is the Sydney test match that's over on the 7th of January, and then it has clear air. And normally then it would get a boost off the Ashes, that people are thinking, the Ashes has been fantastic and I've loved the cricket, I want more. Now it's the Ashes is fantastic and I love the cricket, I want more, and I'm getting it tomorrow because there's more Ashes tomorrow. And I think that's, but again, that's not their choosing. That's because they had no choice because of COVID. And then, the stars all missing and the players testing positive and the fixtures changing and everything else. So it'll bounce back.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great situation, though, when you got the Sydney Smash, which should be a sort of marquee game up against an Ashes day-night test.
It's a terrible situation, but I imagine that was the last thing they wanted to have happen, but, they're struggling.
So Stephen O'Keefe came back from injury, 4 for 18, bowls Alex Hales with his first ball of the match, bowls gets a wicket with his third or fourth ball, so he had 2 for none.
Straight on the phone. If I was the Prime Minister, I'd be straight on the phone and say, Steve, your international retirement is rescinded and you have been picked in the squad to tour Pakistan. Thank you.
Exactly. So, the Sixers won by 60 runs. All righty. Look, that's it. It's late. I'm going to go to bed. Paul, catch up soon.
One last thing. 8.5. Do you bring Green to Asia or give the young fella a rest? I don't think you should give him a rest. I think you should pick him if you think he's worthy of being there. And I think the answer to that is yes. You don't want to bowl him into the ground, and I don't think they will. But, I'd definitely be picking him for Asia. And I think it'd be, especially take him to Pakistan, might get him some valuable experience there, because as important as the series against Pakistan is, the series against India later on in the year is going to be even bigger. So definitely take him.
I think not only do you take him, but he's vital to our plans. I mean, you need plenty of bowling options, and he adds that great dimension. So, absolutely take him. All right. Well, thanks everybody that have listened. We'll be back tomorrow.
See ya.